Assalamualaikum and hi everyone, this is our group project video on a study about perception on financial literacy and saving behaviour among Fskm students. And this is our group members. The problem statement of this research: financial literacy is essential for effective financial decision making, including managing income, expenses and savings. However, many university students still lack sufficient financial knowledge and good saving behaviour, which may lead to financial stress and poor future financial planning. Therefore, this study aims to examine the level of financial literacy and saving behaviour among Fskm students. The objectives of this study is to investigate the relationship between gender and peer influence. Next is to study the effect of parental socialization between programs. In addition, to evaluate the relationship between self-control among students based on semester. Moreover, to analyze whether students' allowance per month affects their saving behavior. Furthermore, to investigate the relationship between part-time jobs and scholarship holders among students. And lastly, to measure the correlation between saving behavior, parental socialization, peer influence, self-control and financial literacy.
Next is hypothesis statement. The first statement that we want to test is whether there is a relationship between gender and peer influence. H0, there is no significant difference in peer influence with respect to gender. H1, there is a significant difference in peer influence with respect to gender. The second statement is whether there is a relationship between parental socialization and students in the CS140 and CS220 programs. H0, there is no significant difference between parental socializations and students in the CS140 and CS220 programs. H1, there is a significant difference between parental socialization and students in the CS140 and CS220 programs. The third statement is we want to find out whether there is a relationship between self-control and students in Part 1 and Part 5. H0, there is no significant difference between self-control and students in Part 1 and Part 5, while there is a significant difference between self-control and students in Part 1 and Part 5 for H1. The fourth one is students' allowance per month. H0, there is no difference in mean of allowance per month group. H1, at least two mean of allowance per month groups are different. Next, part-time jobs and scholarship holder among students. H0, part-time jobs and scholarships holder among students are independent, while they are not independent for H1. The last one is having behaviour, parental socialization, peer influence, self-control and financial literacy. H0, there is no significant correlation between saving behaviour, parental socializations, peer influence, self-control and financial literacy, while for H1, there is a significant correlation between saving behaviour, parental socialization, peer influence, self-control and financial literacy. Let's continue with research methodology. All Fskm students at UiTM Arau across all programs and semester is the population. The sample is 130 selected students from this population. In this research, we use a probability sampling technique, specifically stratified sampling. We divide the population into groups based on their programs to make sure each program is fairly represented in our sample. The population consists of 1,754 Fskm students, and from this, we selected 130 respondents. First, we obtained the complete list of all Fskm students according to their programs. Then, we calculated the number of respondents needed from each program using proportional allocation. For example, programs with a larger number of students like CS110 have a larger sample size, while smaller programs such as CS248 have fewer respondents. This ensures the sample accurately reflects the actual population distributions. After determining the sample size for each programs, we selected the respondents using simple random sampling to avoid bias. For data collection, we distributed the questionnaire through a Google form link which was forwarded to selected respondents. This method allows us to collect data quickly, efficiently and at no cost since it is paperless and environmentally friendly. Overall, this approach helps ensures that our data is representative, reliable and fairly collected. Next is data preparation. At this proposal stage, the study only focused on planning the data coding process because data have not yet been collected. Data coding is basically how questionnaire responses are turned into numbers or symbols so they can be analyzed using statistical software. Each question and its possible answers will be given specific codes along with clear variable names and labels to avoid confusion and ensure accuracy. By planning this properly, the data will be well organized and ready for editing, entry and analysis once the actual data collection is carried out. Next, this is the table that shows the statistical test used based on the research objective.
Next, we have analysis and findings. This is descriptive analysis data that we have collected. We have gender and program from Fskm students. For gender, we get the highest percentage is female students, which is 63.1%. For program, we get CS143 program as the highest percentage, which is 43.8%. Next, we have semester and allowance per month. We get the highest percentage is Part 5 students, which is 46.9%, and we get 29.2% is the highest for allowance per month, which is from 250 ringgit to 400 ringgit. We also have a scholarship holder and if they have done any part-time job analysis. Most of the students is non-scholarship holder, which is the percentage is 76.2%, and most of the students also haven't done any part-time job yet, and the percentage is 58.5%. Next, we have a descriptive analysis for savings behavior part. We got, in order to save, I often compare prices before make purchase. Is the highest mean, which is 4.40, and its standard deviation is 0.677. Meanwhile, in order to save, I always follow a careful monthly budget is the lowest mean in savings behavior, which is 3.81, and the standard deviation is 0.899. We also have a descriptive analysis for parental socialization part. We got, my parents are good example for me when it comes to financial management is the highest mean, which is 4.15, and its standard deviation is 0.846. Meanwhile, I always talk about financial management with my parents is the lowest mean in parental socialization, which is 3.58, and the standard deviation is 1.025. We also have a descriptive analysis for peer influence part. We got, I always spend my leisure time with my friends is the highest mean, which is 3.95, and its standard deviation is 0.825. Meanwhile, I always compare the amount of saving and spending with my friends is the lowest mean in peer influence, which is 3.41, and the standard deviation is 1.105. Next, we have a descriptive analysis for self-control part. We got, I am more concerned with what happens to me in short run than in the long run is the highest mean, which is 2.78, and its standard deviation is 1.48. Meanwhile, I don't save because I think it's too hard is the lowest mean in savings behavior, which is 2.17, and the standard deviation is 1.043. Next, we have a descriptive analysis for financial literacy part. We got, I can manage my money easily is the highest mean, which is 3.78, and its standard deviation is 0.838. Meanwhile, I have better understanding of financial instruments is the lowest mean in financial literacy, which is 3.37, and the standard deviation is 1.013.
In this slide, I will explain the differential analysis. This analysis begins by testing gender difference in peer influence. First, we compare the mean peer influence score of male and female students. An independent separate tests were conducted to compare peer-related score between male and female students. Since the p-value 0.27 is greater than the significance level of alpha 0.05, then we fail to reject the null hypothesis. This indicates that there is no significant difference in peer-related score between male and female students. Next, we test program difference between CS140 and CS240 in parental socialization. Using the same method, an independent separate test was conducted. We found p-value 0.578, which is greater than alpha. Therefore, we fail to reject the hash null, indicating there is no significant difference in parental related score between CS140 and CS240 students. Moving on, an independent separate test was conducted to compare self-control between Part 1 and Part 5 students. Since the p-value 0.045, we reject the hash null, indicating a significant difference in self-rated score between Part 1 and Part 5 students.
Next, this slide presents the inferential analysis on the effect of allowance per month on saving behavior. First, look at the ANOVA table. The main value to focus is the significant value, which highlight in red. The amount is 0.606. Since the value is greater than 0.05, the result is not significant. This means there is no significant difference in the mean saving behavior across different allowance per month group. Therefore, we fail to reject null hypothesis and reject the alternative hypothesis. This indicates that students with different monthly allowance levels demonstrate similar saving behavior. In conclusion, allowance per month does not have a significant effect on student saving behavior. This slide presents the inferential analysis on the association between part-time jobs and scholarship holders among students. First, please look at the cross-distribution table on the left. It shows the distribution of students who have done part-time jobs and whether they are scholarship holders. From the table, we can see that both scholarship holders and non-scholarship holders are involved in part-time jobs, indicating a mixed distribution between the two groups. Next, please look at the chi-square test table on the right. The key value to focus on is the Pearson chi-square significant value, which is 0.639. Since this value is greater than 0.05, the result is not significant. Therefore, we fail to reject the null hypothesis. This means that part-time jobs and scholarship holder status among students are independent, and there is no significant association between having a part-time job and being a scholarship holder. Slide presents the Pearson correlation analysis between saving behavior, parental socialization, peer influence, self-control, and financial literacy. Based on the results, saving behavior shows a significant positive correlation with parental socialization, peer influence, and financial literacy. This indicates that students who receive more support from parents, peers, and have higher financial literacy tend to demonstrate better saving behavior. However, saving behavior shows a significant negative correlation with self-control. Parental socialization is also positively related to peer influence and financial literacy, while peer influence is positively correlated with financial literacy. Self-control does not show a significant relationship with peer influence and financial literacy. Overall, since most of the relationships are significant at the 0.01 level, the null hypothesis is rejected and alternative hypothesis is accepted. This means there is significant correlation between saving behavior, parental socialization, peer influence, and financial literacy among FSKM students.
In conclusion, the study focused on the perception of financial literacy and saving behavior among students from the Faculty of Computer and Mathematical Sciences at UiTM Perlis. Data were collected through a structured questionnaire distributed to FSKM students covering saving behavior and related factors such as parental socialization, peer influence, self-control, and financial literacy. The data were analyzed using SPSS to ensure systematic and reliable results.
Plus, the finding shows that FSKM students are generally aware of the importance of financial literacy in managing their personal finances. The result indicates there is no significant differences in financial literacy perception and saving behavior based on gender or family income. This suggests that students demonstrate similar levels of financial understanding and saving practices. Overall, FSKM students do not face major difficulties in managing their finances and are able to apply basic financial knowledge in their saving behavior. These findings can be useful as a reference for future research and financial education initiatives among university students. That's all. Thank you and bye.